Okay, welcome back everyone. It's 4/13 of 2015. We're going to take a look at the second lesson on Jenson's Ecclesiology. He wants to discuss the theological doctrine of the Pentecost community. He does interpret Pentecost within speculative theology, so we want to take a look at that. He gives it 3 moments, beginning with predestination. Then he wants to pass through Pentecost as mystery, and then conclude with the establishment of the prophetic community. So we'll take a look at the first moment, the doctrine of predestination as applied to individuals. He says this election is nested in a 2-part priority: the priority of God's futurity to all being, and the priority of God's anteriority to being. So election as a priority takes place within time, and that, of course, is going to be the Christ event of death and resurrection, and its continued word presence in the church. So the Christ event becomes the framework for understanding individual predestination. It simply equals what happens for individuals when they are confronted by Christ and the gospel, and as they hear the judgment of the eternal decision, which was antecedently already determined within the ousia essence trimutual space within the Father. So predestination for an individual simply means God's decision to reconcile humanity with himself in Christ. That decision, which was interior to the trimutual converse ousia space within the Father. Now hell, to address the concept of hell, Jenson says that it simply remains an open question. We can't even put any closure on it or discussion. He doesn't know if there is an eschatological place of reprobation that will remain, and therefore it just is simply an open question. There's no determinate answer. He wants to discuss Pentecost theologically, and so it's going to be a very unique look. He wants to look at Pentecost as the mystery that it is. He says the church is founded on the mystery of Pentecost. He gives us 6 aspects. It frees the human community from historical determinism. It provides the gateway to translation into God. It is commensurate with the resurrection itself. It's an empowerment that shares in the mutuality of the Christological role for the church. And it provides the unification of Christ with his body of believers. And it is the liberating power of the community to become the Christ-like actuality in the present world, in the present creation. Now for Jenson, this Pentecost community transitions to prophetic community, and he gives us 5 aspects. It is an empowerment by the Logos reality of Christ risen. Therefore the church is prophetically gathered up into God's eschatological future, and this establishes the church's eschatological structural framework. And so this prophetic gathering up is an event within the eschatological structure of Israel overall, that is the Judaic historical reality for the church. The Spirit created the prophets, and it's the Spirit that creates this prophetic community. So we talked about last time that the community does take on a corporate subjectivity. Well, this corporate subjectivity, according to Jenson, is a prophetic corporate subjectivity. It's a corporate subject with the voice of a prophet. And that prophetic voice is in alignment with the Rhema voice of the Christ event. Now, the culmination of this Pentecost event is the development and the inauguration of the prophetic community. He wants to speak about the prophetic community as within the context of 3 institutions: prayer, meal, and mission. Those are primary for him, so he does boil it down to 3 categorical institutional moments of prayer, meal, and mission. In prayer, the example of prayer that Christ gave us addresses temporal needs and the fulfillment of promise. It is communal for those gathered at the gate of heaven, and believers are invited into sharing Christ's relation to the Father. So prayer does structure our faith. And it is a mystery, of course, of the personal address to God. That it can only be a mystery. Now, the second moment of meals were religious occasions for Christ, and those that he did share meals with. They were enclosed within the offering of thanksgiving, and they were an articulation of the word of thanksgiving, and these meals became a communal act of worship in themselves. Now, the post-resurrection appearances of the Lord, Jenson reminds us, oftentimes were inclusive with a meal. And after Pentecost, the meal fellowship was renewed again by the apostles and given a priority. Within the Judaic understanding of the communal meal, distributing the bread signified participation in prayer, and the shared cup signified the concluding thanksgiving. Both of those elements are aspects of the Judaic communal prayer. Now, the communal meal was always accompanied by a narrative remembrance for Israel, and now we can say that the narrative becomes conclusive with the inclusion of the Christ event. Now, the third moment of mission, Jenson tells us that it began with the rite of washing initiated by John the Baptist. The baptism of Jesus inaugurated his call to be a prophet as both Messiah and Son, and it did constitute the initiation of the Christian baptism. But the mandate to baptize could only occur after the resurrection. So this rite of baptism was to be coupled with the teaching observances of the Christian community. So for Jenson to be a prophetic community that does enclose and represent the Rhema voice of the Christ event, it means to make that voice concrete in prayer, and make that voice concrete in communal meal, and make that voice concrete in the mission. And that mission is both the rite and the word. It includes the rite of baptism and the word of reconciliation. It is a two-sided event. So it's a really good look at the Pentecost from a theological point of view. I think it's a good thing to do, rather than just simply look at it as a New Testament doctrine. We got a chance to look at it theologically, and if we look at Pentecost theologically, it is situated as the middle moment between the doctrine of and the true doctrine and true understanding of predestination, which